Hello guys, good morning. Welcome to another episode of XR Talk Show. Today we're going to talk about randomish, Emacs stuff, technical stuff, programming. Okay, XR Talk Show, and welcome aboard. If you are not here, play at 1.5 speed. If you are here, say hi. Love to see your comments. If you are not here, skip around. Okay, let me show you my keyboards. Glove 80, fantastic. Ultimate Hacking Keyboard, fantastic. Nulia Trackball, fantastic. And not yet, this is Svalbard, Svalboard, okay? For each one of them, I have a review on YouTube and on my website. So let's talk about things, randomish, okay? Hello Shrimp, hello M23 row. Hey, good evening. Hey, from Europe. So we gonna talk randomish. Okay, randomish. Doc type. We need to go to. So we're gonna talk about which key from Emacs version 30 just released 2 weeks ago. Which key is great? We're gonna talk about HTML doc type. Okay, and we're gonna write a Emacs command that insert HTML doc type. You know, you can pick a choice like HTML5, HTML4, and we talk about rant about Microsoft firewall versus the Linux firewall. Fuck, Linux, Unix, idiot. Then we talk about doc type and JavaScript coding DOM, document object model, where you have a bunch of jargons, element node. I'm gonna talk something about that. So you see, I have a comprehensive tutorial on HTML, CSS, JavaScript in depth, JavaScript object reference, starting from the global object, because everything is a child of global object. That's JavaScript. So, and then DOM, this is document object model. This is basically what you do when you use JavaScript to program the web. So in fact, when you do web dev, programming a website, Google, Amazon, whatever, most of the time you're working with DOM. Okay, so JavaScript, you call DOM methods. So comprehensive tutorial and SVG tutorial. SVG is very simple. Okay, and there is a SVG clock you can learn in 10 minutes. And here's the code. Okay, so the code is 100 lines. So anyway, talk about these things. Then yeah, so I was talking about my web dev blog. So there's a lot update on HTML doc type, HTML, complete list of tags and their structural example. Wait, not this page, but somewhere. Okay. So anyway, so then you have DOM and JavaScript, lots of things. Okay, let's begin something somewhere. Okay, so Emacs 30. So if you go to Emacs blog, just search for xali.info Emacs blog, you can see there is Emacs 30. Am I doing good? Okay, comments. Shrimp started learning Golang because of you. Fantastic. Golang is much better than Python. Indeed. Much simpler, faster, and much more cross-platform, and you can compile it into a binary blob. So Golang is, in fact, it's much faster because it's actually a system language, much simpler. So Python, it's more complex. The syntax is fucked. It does not support functional, like basic functional programming, like the Python got the crippled lambda. You you can only use lambda for simple, like one, simple functions. Crippled lambda, it doesn't do much functional programming. while Golang allows. You can Golang does much better. And so Python is just no good. Python sucks in every way. It became popular because Google, only because Google, basically only because Google. The Guido van Rossum is one of the most low IQ person among among those who created a programming language. The Python, Guido van Rossum is the most idiotic, brainless idiot. He's got a vision about, he wants Python to be the most friendly tutorial for children, but it's a lousy language. It's the most lousy language. But added to that, he has an attitude. He thinks he's the greatest designer. The Guido van Rossum idiot. Plus, he's during the social justice warrior era. The Black Lives Matters. The all white males are criminals, or white, all the bad things are done by men. The patriarchy theory. The Guido van Rossum is sponsoring it. He's saying, "Oh, I'm gonna start to teach women only." Like, so in that respect, Guido van Rossum is a minor fuckhead. He's a scum. And created the worst language. Why? But why is it so popular? For two reasons. One is the first time around year 2000. That's because Google started to use Python. Before that, year 2000, Python is unknown. So Google is the beginning, like the big corporation and good corporation. They turned into an evil empire starting around 2010. Okay, but before that, it's one of the best company, best code, best product. Every Google software is the best. No, privacy invasion and do good things for you. That's how YouTube became very popular. Google bought YouTube in the beginning, around 2003 or so. So anyway, in the first 10 years, Google is a very good company, and Google chose Python because back then, year 2000, the only other choice you kind of have is Perl, which is extremely fucked language. So Google started to use Python, and all the programmers are like, "Oh, Google, the great company, the giant corporation, they are using Python. I must use Python too." So that's the beginning. Google introduced Python to the world, basically. Okay, but then Python is, because the language is not good, it's like, going downhill. And then Ruby is a much better language. Okay, so you go to xali.info, you can see my tutorials on Golang, Python, Ruby, Perl. Now, Python, Ruby, Perl, they are kind of similar. They are all scripting languages. They basically in the same category. Okay, so in the first beginning is the Perl, which created by Larry Wall, a fuckhead. He is kind of this. Larry Wall is this kind of cult, a sort of cult. How shall we call it? Cult, maverick, snake oil, charlatan. Okay, by the way, all these are my opinion only, just my opinion. So in case they cannot sue me. So Larry Wall, who created Perl around 1989. Okay, that's the birth of Perl. So Perl but Larry Wall creates lots of, like, he creates some sort of code. That saying that computer science is overrated. I created the language Perl. This is the first postmodern programming language. Okay, and he's got lots of jargons and chant phrases, which are recited by almost every programmer, because Perl for about 15 years is the most popular programming language, the most popular scripting programming language for like 15 years, starting around, let's say, 1995 to 2010. then Python and took over. So Perl was the and saying that he creates lots of jargons and chant phrases like Perl is the Swiss Army knife of programming languages. Like Perl has the Tim Toady fuck, like do what I mean, like the idiots. He creates lots of jargons, and the state of the union. I mean, the state of the onion, and apocalypse, like Perl apocalypse something, and also lots of like he's known for that. So Perl, they dismiss computer science, and there's another phrase. Okay, so let me go to my rant mod. So I have 1,000 articles on Perl. Okay, so laziness is another chanting jargon he used, and theory versus practice. That's another thing the Perl coders spread around. Saying that in theory everything should be correct, but in practice theory is wrong. Things like that. So lots of. And here's a piece of history. Python surpassed Perl in popularity. So this is 2008, exactly 2008. Okay. So we got lots of historical articles. So anyway, back to my topic. So let me show you a few. Okay, so Perl is doing a lot of shit, for 15 years. Back then, people don't know, because every programmer you talk to, the idiots online, like today, even today, but they have different things back then. So, like every programmer you talk to, they'll say Perl is the greatest language, and the Larry Ward says it's the first postmodern programming language. So anyway, then let me get back to whatever. Perl Books Survey, year 2002. By the way, I got him, Larry Ward, to sign a book to Brainpower Larry Ward. Brainpower.com. That's a startup company. About 5 of us worked on. That's 1997, 1998, brainpower.com. So Larry Ward signed it. So I did, I was a master of Perl, so I read about 6-7 Perl books from cover to cover, and here's a list of them and my review. So, so there are these books you can check out. So this article is Perl Book Survey 2002. So you got that. You got Learning Perl, very popular. You got Mac Perl. This is before Mac switched to Mac OS X. Okay, so this Mac Perl is for Mac OS Classic. And then this one is actually was my favorite one, Advanced Perl Programming. Okay, now they came out with a newer edition, but so the 1997 edition is good, but then in 2005 they came out a new edition, but actually it's written by someone else, so it's entirely different. So I cannot recommend that one. But anyway, these are old books. Okay, so like they are basically obsolete. None of this, you should read. They kind of obsolete. And nobody is learning Perl anyway. Perl is kind of obsolete. So it's, so this is one of the amazing things in history. Like Perl at one time is the most popular, like it's the top 3 most popular language: C, C++, Perl, Java. Basically, maybe not Java, but C, C++, Perl. Okay, and Perl is believed by most programmers to be like forever, like the scripting language. If you want to do scripting language, Perl. and that's basically it. There's not gonna be any more. So for 15 years, programmers believed that. And here's Perl cookbook. So, but now we know Perl died. Okay. Now, of course, you newer generation, like you don't know shit, you don't know a thing. But for 15 years, Perl was the most popular, like believed to last forever, like, programming language. But it died. Okay. So that's Perl. So that's one piece of history that's kind of important. That's one big chapter. Another one, for example, is Google. Google for the first 10 years is believed the best ethical corporation, the one that will save, that will fight the evils of Microsoft and others. That it's an evolution. But now Google, turns out it became one of the most evil empire, even more evil than Microsoft. And not just USA, globally, it control everything and, lie big time, lie for the government, create fake news, influence, cheat USA presidential election, and on, Google. And they do, so Google is become, so that's one of the things you should learn, because, turns out back then, all the programmers, we saw Google is the greatest company. We support it, Google is so good. But then they changed. So that's another interesting thing to know. Okay. There are quite a few more. And another one, for example, is Free Software Foundation and open source. In the beginning, they are meant to be helping the little programmers, us, against the giant, huge corporations like Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. We share code. We are hackers, programmers. Like ethical. The sense of hacker as a playful programmer, not as a computer criminal. Okay, so Free Software Foundation by Richard Stallman, then open source in the beginning, which is a branch of like a schism from Free Software Foundation. So we believed, it's a good thing. So, we programmers, we are not greedy. We share our code, among friends. We are against the giant, huge corporations who are usually greedy, patents, lawyers, 1,000 lawyers among Google, Amazon, Facebook, But turns out now today, 99.9% of all the open source are sponsored by these corporations with 1,000 lawyers and 1 million patents. Yeah, they say they sponsor you. They sponsor Linux too. Without this Google, Amazon, especially Google, Microsoft, without their money, the entire open source dies overnight. And also, open source fundamentally got problems. Also, Free Software Foundation. Okay, that's another topic I talked often. So let's go back to programming languages. I kind of digressed already for like 30 minutes. So Ruby, you got Ruby is a much better programming language than Perl, okay? Ruby is much better, created by this Japanese guy. Ruby is based on Lisp, in particular based on Emacs Lisp and Perl, okay? So the idea of Ruby is, Perl is like, this, Perl is like this snake oil thing. Can we create a language that does what Perl do, but with a much better fixed syntax? So that's how he created Ruby. So the syntax is kind of like Perl, but much more. It doesn't encourage like fucking around like the Unix fuckheads. The Unix fuckheads with their man page, ls script, oak, this little jargon cat. They love that, these Unix scums. So Ruby doesn't do that, and Perl is like hopping onto the Unix philosophy. Perl is like, not Perl and Unix is kind of in the same community. Okay, they love like hacking. They love things you cannot understand right away. They love those little things, incomprehensible. They think you need to learn it. So-called hackers. So Ruby is not like that. Ruby is more like scientific, like more computer science and simple, easy to read syntax, and the semantics of Ruby is based on Lisp. Okay, so Ruby is actually much better language. And around 2008, the Ruby on Rails made Ruby incredibly popular. Okay, that's Ruby. So Python is the same category, but Python is the worst. Perl, Python, Ruby, Python and Perl versus Perl, I'm not sure which is better, but they are both pretty bad. Okay, Perl is pretty bad by intention. It's bad because it's intentionally embrace the hacking and fucking around attitude of Unix. Cryptic names, everything is cryptic. You cannot understand it, but it's like convenient and easy to type. That's what they say. So that's Perl, okay? Intentionally that way, and with a bunch of jargons and slogans, a code, just like Unix. For example, in Unix you have Unix philosophy. So in Perl they have like 10 times more jargons. So it's like intentionally created crap. That's Perl. And Perl, the syntax of Perl is based on Unix, basically bash, shells, awk, and all the Unix things like file descriptors, like all that error code. Golang by design is supposed to be more computer science, like do things there's only one way to do it, things like that. But it turns out Python is actually the worst language. Okay, that's about kind of programming language history. Oh yeah, so Google in 2000, around year 2000, Google spread the popularity of Python. Okay, now by 2008, Ruby took over, in part because of the Ruby on Rails. Ruby becomes hugely popular and even possibly eclipsing Python popularity. Why? Because Python is really not that good language. But however, starting around year 2010, there arises the concept of big data, and then data science, and then AI. Okay, because Google, they have like huge amount of data, they need to process it. Machine learning. Okay, so big data, machine learning, then so-called data science. They need to process this huge amount of data to learn something, like learn what kind of clothing do you like, when do you go to shop, where do you shop. They need to find the information. So big data, so then machine learning, then it became basically the AI chat bot, like the neural networks. So Google started to do a lot of machine learning, big data, and they they started to churn out lots of AI libraries, machine learning libraries, okay, and also chips, dedicated chips. So they produce a lot of Python like code, open source. That is why that is the second time Python became hugely popular. Okay, so also because of Google. Without Google, Python will, go nowhere. So here's the article. Why is Python popular? Okay, let's open it. And then why Python sucks. Why Python sucks. So there are like 20 articles on the details why Python sucks. Then you have why Python documentation sucks. Python documentation is the worst fuck possible in programming community, in programming industry. Okay, the number one, the most fucked up scum documentation is the Unix man pages by the Unix fuckheads, the Unix scumbags, including Linux. Okay, in this context, counting all the Linux things in their community, the Unix fuckheads with their man page, and also the Apache documentation. They are the worst possible, the worst technical writing in human history. In human writing history, in the history of human writing for technical documentation. Okay, Unix man page, Apache, the web server documentation around year 2000, and Python. Okay, so Python would be the second or third. The worst documentation possible by the Guido van Rossum, like pretentious guy. Like he think he's like very smart, but he turns out the worst. Okay, so here's like 20 articles on why Python documentation sucks. So going back to Golang is created by this programming genius Rob Pike and another guy. Okay, very simple programming language. It's designed to be like the cleanup of C and C++. Okay, it's a system language, and very simple. So it began around 2008. That is when I realized this Rob Pike guy is super smart. Okay, Rob Pike, he's known for several things. He's a big, well-known guy. He's known for creating UTF-8, the Unicode. He's known for the Unix, known for Unix propaganda. He's a big Unix guy. Okay, he's known for Unix propaganda. He's also known for the newer generation of Unix, Inferno called something, and Plan 9. But those kind of failed. So Golang is successful. Golang is very good, simple. Okay. Okay, that is something about the programming languages. So I kind of digressed all over. I don't think I'm gonna talk anything about today's topic. Because I already talked for 40 minutes. So let's see. So maybe this talk show is just gonna be like a rant on programming languages. So ubiquitous in current hype environment. Yeah, Python is super popular in Python, truly the worst language. So it's it's like amazing. You see, so this is, you can see it as how the good things get buried, but the bad things, the worthless shit, they became all over very popular. Examples are C, Unix, Python, PHP, and we might count JavaScript as well. Okay. Now, however, there are a lot of good reasons for it, because if we want to trace the reason why these languages, C, C++, arguably Python, and PHP and JavaScript, why are they popular? Meanwhile, a lot of us would agree their quality is not very good, bad quality, but however, they become super popular. So why does that happen? We don't want things like that to happen. We want good quality programming languages or protocols to win, to become popular. The bad ones, the bad technical quality, they fail. But that's not how things work. So we don't want to ascribe some mysticism like the Unix fuckheads. They'll say, oh, because look at cockroaches, they are so popular, that's why. Oh, look, because Windows, Unix is so good, but it's not too popular, but Windows is over. Anyway, for social issues such as why certain programming languages are popular, that is mostly a social cause. Okay, so it's a social causes, not technical, because for programming to be used or operating system, by people, by corporations, by industry, there's a social forces going on. So it's not just like mathematicians reviewing programming languages and I think, we think this is the best one, so we should all use that one. That's not how it works. So for social causes, we can look into social causes. So there are many, so there are many social causes. Like, for example, we talked about why, in my opinion, why Python become popular. Because Google, okay, for two cases. One, in year 2000, Google is a big company, very loved by programmers, and they choose to use Python because the other choice is much worse, Perl. So that made Python popular. Then in 2010, because of machine learning, Google churned out a lot of libraries that's written in Python because that's what they use. So that made Python very popular again. So that's valid reasons. Okay, that's valid reasons, not because some mystical or cult reasons or whatever, or Earth is flat. So yeah, and why is C popular? Well, for one thing, it's free. Same thing like most of the Unix things, because it's free. Okay, why is Linux popular? Kind of in the server enterprise sphere. Why is Linux the most used? Because it's free. You don't have to pay. Not because it's open source. That may be part of the reason, but mostly because it's free. If you require corporations to pay just $10 for Linux, it might die overnight. So the cause is a popularity. Okay, so that's kind of another thing to dive into. I have an article on that. I have I have an article on almost all the things I talked about. So there's programming language popularity 2017. There is jargons and what determines a programming language's popularity, and Clojure's popularity, a tango with Java, and then lots of others. Computer language popularity 1997 to 2006. So this is one of my article. Back then it's very popular, super popular. Like if you search for popularity of programming languages, this article is what you'll find. This is 2006. Okay, I wrote it in what time? When did I wrote it? I think 2006. Yeah. and I included a chart. Back then you don't have Stack Overflow yet. You don't have GitHub yet. You might have, they just started. So you don't have these, you don't have many. What's the other website that TOB, that's one of the circus website for popularity of programming languages. Today is like the most popular. If you just search for, programming language popularity. So anyway, back then, 2006, my article is the most popular because, I grabbed the mentioning of words. What is it? Newsgroup traffic on different programming languages, and I made a chart with Wolfram language. Okay, so basically C, C++, and Java and JavaScript. Okay, so let's see. So the red is Lisp. You see, this red is Lisp. So this, now remember, this is 2006. I'm a Lisp fan. Okay, so we Lispers hope that Lisp is finally, it's gonna become popular, but no, fuck the Lispers, because they believe in false information. That's why they never become popular, and they, lots of other reasons. So the red is Lisp, the blue, that's C. The green is Perl. You can see C and Perl is like all over. And the pink you see there, that's JavaScript. Okay, so this is 1987 to 2005. Okay, then the other chart is scripting languages. So you have Perl, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, PHP. So you can see, anyway. So what we gonna do? So let's see. I wanted to. Well, there are several things I wanted to talk about, but we got digressed into programming language. Okay, I think I'll do some of these. We got 15 more minutes. Read comments and do some of these. Oh, we got lots of comments. How many people watching? 13. I'm a popular guy. Is my video audio going good? Sometimes I did entire 1 hour, but my video or audio is off. Python, so how long will it last? We don't know. I mean, it could die in 10 years, like it could. Just look at Perl. Now remember, back in let's say year 2000, every website, basically almost every 99%, is created by Perl. But around year 2002, like also, it took over PHP. PHP took over. Yes, the Glove 80 is fantastic keyboard. Okay. I talked about so many times. I did so many reviews about it. Okay, so let's see what we're gonna talk about next. Linux towards. Link in description doesn't work. Yes, that's true, because I haven't uploaded it yet. That's the page right now we are talking about. I haven't synced to my website yet. is there any reason why you choose Wolfram back then? Yeah, I talked about that before. I like Linux because I don't like GUI-based program. That is also a bad thinking. But, so anyway, so let me talk about a few things. So Wolfram language and yeah, so why did I pick Wolfram? Because back in 1992, I'm a math guy. I wanted to be the greatest one of the greatest mathematician back in 1992 when I was like 20 years old. So, but I'm also into computers. I love computers. So I want a, computer algebra tool software that's the best one. So I researched, back then you don't have internet, not really. But then you read books, you talk to people, there's online forum like CompuServe, their opinions, they say, Wolfram Mathematica is the best computer algebra system. So I bought it. I read the 1,000 pages documentation, cover to cover, word for word, 3 times over different years. So I become, so I mastered Mathematica. So that's starting around 1992. And my next language is only in 1998, Perl, okay? So I don't know any C, I have no idea. I haven't learned any, like, I didn't go to, well, I went to college, but I only took math classes. So anyway, I learned, Mathematica just by reading the manual by myself. Then I started to learn Perl, the industrial thing. Like, what the fuck is Unix? What is tar? I was like, back then, Unix is like this strange thing. Oh my God, this like seems like very advanced, And then tar, like tar, so silly, like what is tar? And then I heard this GNU thing, GNU, and I heard about this Emacs, like, so it's some kind of weird thing, Yeah, so 1998. And I don't know anything else, I just know Mathematica. Learned by myself. I didn't go to a college for like standard programming course, like introduction to computers, to programming, to operating systems, to networking, data structures, algorithms. I didn't do any of that. I just learned Mathematica, today known as Wolfram language, by myself, by reading the manual, like 1,200 pages. I have an article on that on my website with photos and pictures, so I have like, just search for, go to Saudi, search, you'll find. So I don't have the normal, so that's how I learned Wolfram language, because I'm into mathematics, and Mathematica is the best software for doing mathematics. So I mastered it. Then in 1998, I started to learn Unix, like what the fuck is Unix, what is Perl, what is C, and Lisp. I heard Lisp so much because Wolfram language is very much a Lisp, in the same kind of community for mathematics, for advanced computer science, for, theoretical stuff, for, so then I started to learn other languages, like the so-called industrial languages, like today, Python, Java, Perl, Ruby, Bash, and it turns out, why are these languages so fucked up? Like in Wolfram language, I don't know anything else. Like, to do this, I just this line. But in other languages, in Perl, you have to do like 5 lines or 7 lines. Why does that happen? Why are all these other languages and then C? I don't understand. What is malak? Why do you have to do like malak, or what memory? What memory? If I want a list, I just say variable equals to a list of items. What the fuck is malloc and array and the pointers? Fuck. I started to learn like the reality, like this industrial programmer and file handle. What the fuck is a file handle and file descriptors? You see, I'm a mathematician. A file is a thing on your computer. You open it, you say open file, a function. Then the argument, the file path. File path allow you to specify, identify a file. A file is a like computer, item on a computer. Open file, file path. That's it. What the fuck is file handler? File descriptors. Then you have to close the file and all the bunch of like error code and whatever, and bit mask and octal mask and the fuck Unix fuckheads and fuck C and pointers, And so, of course, now I know the answer. It's quite interesting, of course, because they, Wolfram language is turns out, now I know, it's a higher level language, a magnitude higher than all programming languages, even today. Like Python, Ruby, JavaScript, they are a higher level than C, C++. So in Python, you don't have to deal with like malloc or thing, But then Mathematica, Wolfram language, is like a magnitude higher than Python. Okay, that is what's actually going on. That's why in Wolfram language, like, you can do this, but not that's what's going on. So in lower languages, you have to deal with memory. You are working, you have a program language that works with the hardware, okay? So that is why. So that's how I learned Wolfram Mathematica, because I want to do math. About GUI, that's another big topic. Like I have 10,000 articles about that. Because one of the thing that the Unix and C and Linux fuckheads, why are they fuckheads? Because they are idiotic when it comes to certain things to a degree so severe that whatever their opinions on this topic, they are just like, they become idiotic and create harmful opinions to society, to the programming industry. And that is why today, or back then, on Unix, on Linux, everything you do on Linux or Unix, the graphical user interface is the most idiotic, the most unusable. Why? Because these people, first of all, they don't care for it. Because their mind has certain way. They don't know about GUI. They don't like it. They don't, they cannot properly think about GUI. They don't know. The things these C and Unix fuckheads, what they love and what they do the best is hacking. Okay, they cannot, for example, Wolfram language, mathematics, far more advanced than their malloc or memory, and far more structured, but it's too deep. They don't understand, and they don't like it. Like when mathematics, they don't know. They like the hack bit diddling. They are very good at it. C Unix, that is the heart of C and Unix, and all the things these people creates. Okay, so one of the relevant issue is GUI. GUI. Okay, so let's look for GUI. So I have some relevant articles about that. So you gotta go to You gotta search for graphical user interface. Okay, so let's search for graphical user interface. Graphic, okay, user article. Do graphical user interface make people dumb? Okay, that's one of the popular opinion from the Unix fuckheads and from the Emacs fanatics. Very common opinion. You know, they hate Microsoft. They hate Microsoft Word because they, in their belief that any people, you know, you make GUI to make software easier, then people become more dumb. So you have to forever create more GUI. That's their opinion, the idiotic opinion. Okay. Another article, a graphical user interface versus command line. Okay. So, and Emacs terminal versus graphical user interface. Several articles. Okay. So it's a common attitude among Unix, Linux lovers is that they hate GUI usually. They love command line. Okay, but their opinion in general have lots of flaws. They don't think deep. They don't know. They don't have much knowledge about things, about people's behavior, about perception systems, about the human brain. They don't know much of anything. You know, they just like the Unix and C hackers. They just know bit diddling, very technical stuff. They believe if you are a person who cannot understand what's a bit, you shouldn't use a computer. A lot of them actually believe that. so this type of people, Unix and C, they created lots of bad information. Okay, so I'm kind of like quickly trying to describe it. Okay, where is it? Here. Okay, so for example, there is this guy, David Kastrup. In 2010, he wrote a opinion. David Kastrup is one of the well-known Emacs developer. Okay, back then, I don't know where he is today, but back then he wrote a lot on the newsgroup. So he wrote, you know, let me just quickly recite what he says. I think the point was that the manual was not deficient concerning the information it provides, but in not making Sally want to read it. In a way, it is a losing battle. People expect software to just work without reading manuals. 95% of all Microsoft Word users, for example, create their documents by mostly visual manipulation of their text without having a clue about underlying structures like references, style sheets, and so on. Okay, that's like very common opinion, and he's trying to analyze. The context is about, I think, Emacs manuals, I forgot, but there's a link to the original on, original post. Here. So anyway, so then I retort, that's called progress. You see, one of the progress in technology, a general progress, is that you do not require people to know much things in order to use it. Okay? So today, for example, your cell phone, it enabled billions of people to use a computer without even knowing what is a website, what is a browser. Like most people don't know what's a browser. They don't know what's a Wi-Fi. They don't know what's the difference between cell phone, networking versus the Wi-Fi. Like they don't know nothing. They don't know what is a copy paste. Okay, like my wife don't know copy paste. Okay, but it enabled a billion of, like half of people, like more than half of people on Earth, to be able to talk to their friends, grandma, parents, or whatever, across the globe. The cell phone. Thank you, Steve Jobs. He made it popular. Okay, that's one example of the characteristics of technological progress. You do not require people to understand how it works in order to benefit from it. Okay? Now, if you leave it to the Unix fuckheads and the C fuckheads, you will never have progress like that. Like, never. All you get is like the bunch of like tech nerds, like 1 in a million in population, like us. We talk to each other. We love each other. Hey, Xa, what hack did you done? Did you filter your firewall? Did you install this or that? Like these fuckheads. Okay, they have no idea how other people, how society, the structure, and so on works. They just know what they are concerned. These nerds. So they have opinion on GUI. Like GUI should be banned. We should all. You should be all like me. Okay, let's see. Like turn on a command line. Duh, this is precise. Look, that's how precise it is. Fuck the Unix and fuck the C fuckheads. I like to emphasize that because it is not a troll. Okay, a lot of people say, Xa, you are a troll. You are the biggest troll. They've been saying that for like 20 years. No, I'm not trolling. I believe the Unix and C people, they created a huge damage to computing industry for like 30 years. Okay, even today, their damage lasting even till today. For example, line-based computation. Like when you do diff, everything is line-based. Because why? Because back in 30, 40 years ago, Unix truncate lines. When it's longer than 70, 80 characters, they truncate it silently too. By the Unix fuckheads. Silent truncation. That's why all the programming languages habituated to line-based. In particular, one of the big examples is Python. Okay, why do you have line-based programming? Because, I mean, what is an example of the Unix damage that we still have today? Python. The entire language syntax is line-based. Like line-based, then indentation. Okay, that's another thing. But first of all, it's like each line is a unit. It's part of the, you cannot have automatic formatting like Wolfram language I showed before. Automatic typesetting, on-the-fly formatting. You cannot possibly have that. First of all, I give you the rule that everything must be a line. So you are, you are cursed to forever format each line, like tab or space. Like then let's argue about tab space. Each one of each line. You have to format each line. That is the damage from the Unix and the C fuckheads. Okay, they did damage to computing industry, long lasting. And one of the damage to this day is the line-based computation, the diff. Like if you join two lines, even it's the same statement, but the diff will get confused. That's why today you have like semantic diff, which is like different, you have that. Okay, and counting of lines, line of code, that's another damage. Like, like counting of lines as a way to measure the program complexity or program software power, or programming effort, very idiotic. So all this I attribute to the Unix and C fuckheads, those people who spread them. Okay, and to this day, lots of like a Git. Whenever you commit, if your commit message is longer than 80 characters, it'll complain. Please format your message, your commit message to 80 characters, because otherwise it's hard to read. They don't, you see, it's hard to read. You see, they don't understand. You see this auto formatting, they forgot about it. When you have anything in code, they forgot about auto formatting. They think every time your line reaches 80 characters, you must manually cut it. Otherwise, you are a fuckhead by these Unix and C fuckheads. You see, they don't understand any of this auto formatting. You see that. And this damage, this about the line truncation, I talked about in my live stream for like 3 times in the past, like the whole hour. Okay. And I learned people don't, these Unix people, they don't get it. They watch the whole thing and they'll still say, oh, but it makes it hard to read. Okay, so let me try to explain that. You see, it is true. Let me try to explain that again, okay? One more time. Why not? It is true that lines longer than 80 characters makes it harder to read, okay? It is true. However, we do have the facilities of automatic formatting so that lines do not go beyond 80 characters, okay? And this automatic formatting of lines is everywhere in your, in any text editor, in your Gmail, in your browser display, in HTML, in your chat box. It's like normal. And it's better. You don't want to force people to like count number of characters. Oh, did I reach 80 characters yet? Press return. Or, by the way, you need to install autofill so that then it will automatically insert a carriage return when you reach 80 characters. It will automatically count for you. You don't want that. You want people to simply type and whatever window size that will automatically wrap it. Okay, that is the thing. So that your line is not like 1 million characters, like you have to read from left to right. That doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anywhere. But the Unix and C fuckheads didn't understand this. They will still insist. After this video, you'll see in the comment. Oh, but it's harder to read. More than 80 characters, it's too long. Incredible, because you see why I hate the Unix and C so much, because they are not just bad. For example, Windows is bad enough, but Windows is a commercial entity. They are bad for a reason. They are bad because they are just greedy. They don't care. They just want money. Okay, all I want is money, Bill Gates. They don't care what actually is good or bad. They just care Bill Gates makes a lot of money and whatever investors. That's the reason Windows is bad. Okay, part of the reason. The other reason is because they are big. They don't, if they improve it, it doesn't make them more money. They already like saturated whatever money they can make. So Windows is bad. Yeah, sure, there's good reasons. They are commercial. But the Unix, the Unix fuckheads, they are bad, but they insist they are good. You see, that's a problem. This happens with the Unix and C fuckheads and the Perl, because they create a code. You see, so that's why all these bad ideas are persistent to this day. They have a code behind them. Unix is the best thing, and today Linux, of course. Linux is, why are you not using Linux? Oh, you must be stupid. because Linux, everything I can control. Oh, and Linux command line. Oh, it's so precise. You have to spend 10 years to learn it, but it's good. Fuck the Linux. Fuckheads. Let me repeat. I'm not trolling, but I seriously believe the Unix and C fanatics has done great damage to computing industry for the past 30 years. And in the past 10 minutes, I just gave an example from the line truncation, which basically began with Unix, the line truncation, and its consequences. Among them is the designing of the Python programming language, which forces you to manually indent each and every line. And other things, like in Git message commit, and in lots of other things. In another example, let me show you another example of the damage of the line of the Unix line thinking, and also lines of code. I mentioned. So another damage. Let me go to let me mention that, and maybe that'll be it. Okay, about user interface, we haven't finished talking about, because we haven't finished talking about that, but we digressed. Okay, so let's go to, so let's go to, search again, Nagam, okay, let's just go through Death of a Troll, My Memory of Eric Nagam, 1965 to 2009, okay? So in this article, I quoted what he wrote. You can see. So you can see here is message he wrote on Newsgroup. Okay, so here, that's, let me magnify. Okay, you see it's nicely formatted. This is from Newsgroup. This article is from Eric Nagam. You see, he follows, a good boy, he follows the Unix or the email convention. By the way, the Unix fuckheads made it into the email protocol that you must have a new line at the end of every characters, 80 characters or less. You must have that. Unix fuckheads made that into the email protocol. Okay. So anyway, so this message by Eric Nagam, let's copy it. So you can see he does format his code. So I mean, so let's open it. So you see here, can you guys, like, what you guys are seeing? Okay, so you see, so how many characters are that? Ruler mod. Okay, so 80 characters is here. So his line, each line is less than 80 characters. Perfect. Following the Unix convention, you see. But now the problem is this, you see. Now if your window becomes smaller, you see right now it's this nicely formatted, But if your window becomes smaller, then you got this fuck, okay? You got this fuck. Why does this happen? Is this what you want? No, it becomes like fucked up. But why does this happen? Because this 80 characters per line, this idea, is a type of physical formatting. So it's fixed, it's hard-coded, physical. So it does not adjust or adapt to different window size. Your window or viewport must be such that it must be, like exactly 80 characters. If it's longer, that's fine. But if it's less, you got this fucked up, wrap, or the rest of lines went into invisibility. So that's another. This is obviously this is bad. You see, because the Unix people, they don't want, they can't think of the, the automatic wrapping. That's beyond them. They think you must manually do this. Okay, that's another dimension. Okay, I think that's it. So that's 80 minutes now, I think. Okay, I think that's it. And let me just 3 more minutes. I read the comments and we shut down. Okay, don't forget to pay me. Now, if you like my stuff, just pay me. Go to ksadi.info and go all the way to the bottom. Okay, Amazon gift card. Click that link, PayPal, and then you have to copy paste my email address. I don't have the nice link where you just click there and then directly you just type your credit card. I kind of don't like that, but so you have to be conscious, you actually want to pay me. Then you go there to the site, then you copy paste my email address and stuff. Put money where your mouth is. Is there any reason why you choose Wolfram? Yeah, I answered that. So I like Linux because I don't like GUI. Yeah. So GUI and the command line, they have different advantages and disadvantages. So that's scientific way of approaching. Let me summarize it quickly. So GUI, I mean the terminal. Excuse me, I smoke too much. The terminal has advantage, the most being extremely precise and extremely powerful. Okay, so but however, the disadvantage is that you have to take time to learn it. Just like Unix and Linux. That's why you guys love it. You for example, what does it take to learn shell? A month. Bash or PowerShell, let's say Bash, in a Unix environment. So once you know it, you can, I can write a program, let's say, I want to open this in terminal, I press 2 keys, that's an Emacs command, you can see I wrote it, open in terminal, okay, and magnify, so you can do you can filter out, let's see, cd ... So you go to the previous so it allows you precision, it allows you power, but the disadvantage is that you have to take time to learn it. Okay, now if you do not take the time to learn it, then you have no idea what is going on. What do I do with this? What do I type? What commands? What does command mean? And okay, command is you explained what's a command. Then how many commands are there? What is it? I want to show a photo of my mom, let's say. How do I do it? You see, you have to take time to learn it. On the GUI, you don't. And GUI usually takes much more time to program. Okay, command line, it's much easier to create command line interface. But if you want to create GUI, oh my God, that involves, first of all, it involves the entire 2D graphical system. You need to be able to draw. Somebody must have write that. Okay, you Unix fuckheads. You don't do GUI because your brain is too small. You are incapable. The Lisp systems back then in 1980s, they do GUI, they do graphics, They have raster images and vector graphics. The Unix fuckheads and C, no. Because they are simple brains, simple-minded brain. They like bit diddling and commands, but they don't know how to, like, mathematics, matrix, linear algebra. Oh my God, you have to, draw a window. How do you do that? It's too complex for them. Okay, so first of all, GUI is actually much harder to do. Even when you have a library, it's much harder. And even when you have functions to draw windows and buttons, and especially like in HTML, you can do that. Or in HTML today, go to the DOM section and go to, radio buttons. This is what radio buttons originally meant. And here is, radio buttons, bird, dog, cat. And you can create a buttons, like click me, click, So all this GUI, even if you have a library to do it, such as HTML, it takes a lot of time to design. Like, where do you want to place this so for it to make sense? It takes far more thinking. Okay, GUI is far more difficult to create. Command line is much simpler. Advantage is, well, fast to create a command line, precision and power. But you have to take the time to learn it. GUI, anyone can use. If you spend the time to program the graphical drawing library to design the interface, then anyone can use it. Your mom, your pop, your dad can use a cell phone. They can use it to look up Google Maps. They can use it to browse the web to find what's news, to find the weather. They can talk to their grandma or whatever, your friends' phone. Okay. So GUI is actually much difficult to create, and advantage is much easier to use. But it has a disadvantage, that is, it's less powerful. So for example, GUI, I want to, get all text here involving certain word. You can, you go find, let's say document, okay, one occurrence, document, that's GUI. On the other hand, if you are on terminal, it shows, everything, like you can do it in the command line too, but as an example, right? So all things said, all things considered, which one is, let's say, more important? Both has uses, of course. For scientists, for programmers, command line, yeah. But for non-tech people, GUI is much more useful. But all things considered, if you can have only one, which one is more important for the entire Earthlings, humanity? That would be GUI, okay? Because without GUI, imagine all the phones in the world is gone. We are back to like, so that means all the collaboration, like all the much of the things we know is gone. Okay. Diego purchased Mathematica, worth every penny. Thank you. Yes. The Wolfram compiler itself is written in C. That is true because, well, you have to. It's a low-level language. What's this annoying thing? Hey, George, the same type of person who likes Unix and C also likes stock mod. That's funny. Is that true? Yeah, kind of. Yeah, a little bit. Things are not black and white. There are different requirements and different people with different experiences, so different tools are better for different tasks. That's kind of true, but that's not a general theory, okay? Because a lot of people will say, comparing programming languages doesn't matter because different tools for different people, different use case. No. It's like saying, comparing the power of a tank and the Toyota car is false because different tool for different purpose. No. Sometimes you need to compare which one is more powerful. Tank is much obviously more powerful in terms of running down houses. So obviously tank is more powerful when it comes down to running down a house compared to Toyota. But this which, different tool for different people, they will say, you cannot. No, that's not true because different tool for different purposes. Those are idiots, which is common. I don't mean you, okay, but it's kind of common. Whenever people compare or discuss the merits or the design advantages of programming languages, like usually it's heated. A lot of them just you can argue with reason, or a lot of them is more arguing because of religion, because this language I know, I think it's better than everything, right? But then they'll pop out. It will pop up another group. You'll say, you guys are silly. Languages, they have different uses. Therefore, I'm the most superior because the fuckheads. That's another group I despise, because that group always dismiss, if you are a thinker, if you are talking about things, deep analysis, what are beneficial, GUI or command line or different languages, their design. That's an issue because you have to design there's good and bad. For example, bad, let's say every function name is 50 characters. Compared to another system, every function name is like 20 characters. The 50 characters obviously is like what for? It's mostly likely bad, right? So that's a technical, like actual point. You can say it doesn't matter. It matters. So yeah, so when you do deep dive, then there comes out a guy, it doesn't matter. Different people have different likings, so all you're thinking is like stupid. It's too much philosophy. I despise that. Okay, bye guys. That's a big rant on programming languages, 90 minutes. Bye. Shut down in 2 minutes, okay? This time shut down for sure. Show that, let's reopen, show that, close, show that, close, show that, close, show that. I'm just gonna put links to my talk show, okay? Yeah, so today's talk show, we basically did a rant on programming languages and we didn't talk about anything else. So yeah, let's copy all the things we talked about. Death of a Troll, my memory of Eric Nagum. Eric Nagum is a troll. He's one of the top expert of Emacs and Lisp in general, Common Lisp. He's a fanatic of Common Lisp, which I despise, but I like him. So anyways, so he died. JavaScript in depth copy. We close down in 2 minutes. Okay. I'm just gonna post a link here. So HTML button when we are talking about GUI code. Ubuntu Unity, that sucks. That's another GUI issue. Terminal width versus graphical user interface. In Emacs, like some people prefer to use Emacs in terminal only, which has a lot of disadvantages, because that means you cannot display an image. So for example, I have lots of images here. Let's not go, let's go to the top. All these are text. JPEG. Okay, you can display images. You cannot do that in terminal. So that's one big advantage of running Emacs in a GUI environment. You cannot do in a terminal, and lots of other reasons. Okay. And this article is about, okay, so we know that there are advantages and disadvantages of terminal and GUI. So is it possible to have a system that has the advantages of both? Okay, that's what I think it is possible. So basically you want a GUI interface, but with a key system. Okay, so for example, on Windows, you have press Alt and T, and you got a key system. So you press a sequence of keys, it will call the command. So in this way, you can have, this system would have the accuracy, the precision of the command line interface, because each key sequence will always produce, basically just call a command, okay, produce the same result. So you got the precision and you got the ease of use. So you don't have to learn it. You can just, menu, you take 5 minutes to learn about what menu is. So you can, so I believe this is a system that has advantages of both, okay? But nobody actually follow this. In order to actually use this advantage, you need to be pervasive. You need to provide all possible commands as a key sequence and available on the menu, okay? Like all possible. Like in Bash, for example, you have 1,000 commands, and each command, you have parameters, right? Optional parameters. You want to be able to encode that in a GUI and be able to also provide options away, okay? So nobody actually do that fully, okay? So, but however, there are a few systems that's very close. One is Emacs. It doesn't exactly follow it, but you can, for example, by the way, Emacs 30, you have which keys. So you can see, so you can, I press a few keys, it'll call a command. And if I press them slowly, the sequence of keys, it'll also show me what's the next possible key. So this way is kind of the merge of the advantage of the command interface and GUI. So I have precision, and I have power too, because then you can give arguments to any of these commands by traditionally pressing Control U first. Okay, so Emacs does that, and the other one is Wolfram language. Okay, so I'm not gonna talk about that. Okay, bye.